Greetings, everybody.
This is our podcast.
I called it the why of creativity.
Okay, I like that.
It sounds kind of like a Y axis. The X factor could be like, ooh, charisma, all the special things. Like you dig down, it's like, how do I make my creativity special? Should I do blood sacrifice? Should I take some courses? The X factor, right?
Ah,
But the Y is fundamental and people ignore it. All the courses, all the classes that we go to take at the conference or whatever, it's all about the X factor. How can I get noticed? How can I be good? How can I stop procrastinating? How can I stop beating my wife so much? And then this why. But why? Why am I actually doing this? And Shane, why would you say that the why is important?
the why is important because you not only can you not write anything that's any good if you don't know why you write, but you're also just gonna waste time and blow creativity without realizing your full vision if you don't understand why. I think that's what I think.
That when you're that if you're not clear on why you're doing it, you won't be able to shape what you're doing
Yeah,
to match your why, to really get all the gears lined up, the teeth of the gears.
yeah. I think that's definitely part of it, and also just like I don't think you'll enjoy it. I think you have to enjoy what you're writing.
Ah, now that's such a big thing. Such a big thing. Yes, absolutely. I think we actually, it's funny, I think we moved away from that. I think the original phase, and this is in my head, but I think some people might relate to it. There's kind of this phase with this fixed mindset where there's people who are talented with writing and people who aren't. And we had that for a while. And now it's very much like you've got to show up and do the work. That's the only important thing. You might have different emotions, but you've got to work hard. And if you don't know how to market yourself or you don't know how to write an ending, you need to learn that too. It's just all about nose to the grindstone. And that's good in a way because it's that growth mindset that you're able to stretch yourself to learn new skills and so on. But I think it's very harmful because it neglects the why and this idea that you have of we almost shun people who have a passion for writing because we think of them as these flaky dilettantes. I only write things that I really feel motivated to write. Well, you're not going, you need to learn new muscles. You need to stretch yourself. You should be cruel to yourself.
Sit at the typewriter and bleed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We definitely idolize and idealize the idea. I mean, we kind of despise the suffering artist in the sense of writer's block or non profitable artists. We very much think those are little snowflakes. But we do absolutely glamorize people who suffer but are also successful. If so, I feel like the two words of like good artist and bad artist are whether you're successful or not, really. It's very capitalist now. If you're saying I'm not successful, then it's like, okay, so you're not trying enough, you're not taking enough classes, you're not putting out enough work, you're not studying the market, you know. And then if you are successful, it doesn't matter if you say, yeah, my life is hell. First I get up and then I take care of my entire family and then I write for 17 hours and then I let myself have a single trisket. People are like, that's amazing. Can I join your cult?
Yeah, and I think there's probably some kind of combination there of like the suffering through it, and then like I don't even know what the success is measured by because we consider so many artists. We think of so many people as being artists who like were shunned in their own day for not being financially successful. Like Van Gogh was completely destitute, I think, by the time he died.
I mean, this is kind of the external, like, okay, the world thinks a certain way about certain artists. And that's a great why question. And I've written down a couple of things. And I wrote down for why. The first thing I came up with is self expression being at the top of the hierarchy of needs, being something that people need to do. I think that's a kind of fundamental why that might resonate with most people, no matter what they build on top of that. What do you think, Shane? And when you do your work, I mean, is that the basic why? Is it something in you that you're expressing?
Yeah, I think that basically any time that you feel the need to write or create at all, it must be something that's coming from some sort of a need to self-express. Like it comes from a need to think through things or to realize something that isn't as satisfying because it's in the back of your brain. I think self-expression can mean so many different things, but often it's just like there's some unseen little germ in there that needs to be fully brought out and nurtured into a full animal or whatever the metaphor is that I'm going for.
Yeah, yeah. No, that you're discovering something.
Yeah, I
It's
think
not
that's the.
expressing yourself as much the way you say it. It's not expressing yourself as much as discovering yourself. And I would relate to that.
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know what I'm. I wonder what the difference is between that because I guess expressing yourself is an act of self-realization. Like I don't know, it's telling people in some way that I found who I am and I'm communicating that to you. But I don't know if there's so much difference between wanting to make good work for your own self-expression purposes and wanting to make good work so that people can read good work. There must be some unified thing in there.
Here's what I think, and this is the conversation that was before we started recording about views of God and the structure of the universe. And I was saying in the New Age perspective, everything is one consciousness, and that's often what people call God, or all that is, or something like that. The idea that there's nothing apart from you. So self expression, I kind of do want to redefine that a little bit because, yeah, it does kind of sound like only works that are about someone's emotions or their own life when obviously much work is about intellectual concepts, conceptualizations, advanced structuring of various things, restructuring and redefining of things, wild fantasies that are unrelated to the life of the person or their inner emotional life. Some of the great works of creativity are highly technical and they are not about that person and how they specifically present themselves. But when I say self-expression, I'm saying a whole self that includes the mental self and includes the entire no, when I'm saying self-expression, I'm saying expressing your viewpoint. And I don't just mean a ranting opinion, I mean everything you're capable of perceiving and analyzing and processing and re expressing. So I think I want to define self expression as not necessarily being about your personality, but being about anything that you have to offer.
That's that's amazing. Offering like one realm of reality that exists on top of everyone else's. I guess anytime you create a world, even if it's a world that's entirely consistent with this universe today, here and now, it's going to represent a perspective that's completely in alignment with what everyone else can see, but it communicates something entirely different because it's how you've seen it.
I love that. And it's just whatever you have to contribute. And that doesn't mean again that it has to be fantasy. Like you're saying, it could be a treatise on metaphysics instead of a creative work. But you are contributing, you are expressing your understanding and your theories and even your phrasing and even your organizing of whatever it is. So, yeah, that's why there's this idea that we have, I guess, do we agree that self expression is a basic need? This idea of living our truth.
Yes. I think I would put that as like the the reason for me.
Once we say that we want to express whatever it is we have to offer in our heads or whatever other field that we want to, we can draw all kinds of different energy structures of the human body. I'm writing from the kidney today. So the my next thing that I wrote down was another concept from Bashar, the extraterrestrial, channeled by Daryl Anka, which is where I get most of my information from. Which is why most people no, I'm kidding. I also listen to Fox News, so it balances out. No.
Yeah, I think you have a fully rounded image of reality that way.
You remember that person who wrote on Tumblr that was like a meme for a while? It's like, if I have like flaming hot Cheetos and like Dentine ice at the same time, they'll cancel each other out. And then they were like, no, it really doesn't.
Yeah, you just ended up with a disgusting flavor in your mouth and possibly something toxic. But Bashir sounds like a nice
Yeah.
person though, so I wouldn't necessarily loop them in with with Tucker Carlson
Oh
or
my
whoever
goodness. Yeah.
that idiot who replaced
Yeah.
him was.
Oh dear God. But that actually, this dichotomy that we're saying here is actually is funny, but it kind of what I'm saying is we say we want to express ourselves, and then we talked earlier about the idea of success, wanting to be successful. I wrote down anxiety versus excitement, which is a Bashar concept. The idea that you're saying, you said earlier, quite accurately, I think, that you have to care about, you have to like what you're working on, or you won't be able to do it, and you won't be able to. When you said for your why, you have to really be able to line up what excites you, what's motivating you to create this. And that will help you organize the work and make everything. I'm paraphrasing this, but that's what I got from what you said. And I think that's your excitement. But there's also a strong element that we have, I think, at least I do, around anxiety, which is the same energy as excitement, Bashar says, but kind of reframed by negative beliefs. So it could be, I want this work to be really recognized by other people because I need validation. I mean, there could be a positive. I want to share this work with other people because I love people. And I think that anxiety is often what we're talking about when we talk about why we should examine why. That we can be
Mhm.
working from a place of anxiety. Do you relate to that?
Yes, and I think the anxiety, I do think that the part of the anxiety comes from, is this going to be, good enough to be a New York Times bestseller or whatever,
Mm.
or the next big American screenplay. But I also think part of the anxiety is just the fear of aberrating from your idea of your self vision. So I was actually having a conversation with myself last night, as I do sometimes. Um,
Go
I have
on.
this. I, I I did parts therapy for a while. So in parts therapy, you take
I
out like,
loved the description of this, by the way. It really influenced me. Mm.
oh yeah, I love parts therapy. You
Anybody who does archetype work, anyone who's interested in all that kind of stuff, it just sounds brilliant.
absolutely go for it and try it at least once, even if it like seems weird. You pull out a part of your mind, you give it a name, and then you have a conversation with it. So I did this over
Mm.
writing, um, and I have this character called the Emperor, and it's based on
Nice,
that
nice.
my
Got to be the tarot for you.
absolutely, it's based on my tarot interpretation of what the Emperor is, which is the part of you that is consciously trying to pursue an image of yourself. And I
Ah,
asked the Emperor last night, because I was like, you keep making me feel bad about uh, things that I things that I do that I think are wrong or that somehow don't match my vision of myself. And
mm.
he responded, he's a he, I don't know why, but he responded saying, I don't know how to communicate what I want you to do, how I want you to positively pursue the goals that I have for you, because you tend to interpret my urging you to pursue the things that you want as a punishment. And I think that's been like a
Hmm.
constant theme. Like if I don't read the right book, if I don't write the right thing, or if I can read something that I've written that I thought was good and I can tell that it's just not what I was trying to say, in retrospect, it feels uh, like there was potential there that was wasted and that I haven't realized that, um, whatever that vision for my creativity was, and it feels
Oh
like there's this
wow.
internal punishment that's like, you
Ah,
did that wrong.
I wonder, I relate to that so much. I wonder how many people, if anyone ever listens to this, will think, oh my goodness, this is real. It's not just this idea of the inner critic saying my work isn't good enough. It's saying, I haven't done the right work yet. I'm not doing the right work. I'm not living up to my full potential. And it's really painful. And for me, because it's been an interesting year for me, it turned out for me that I'm a hollow gourd with nothing but an emperor in it. Like, I
Oh,
really was
that's not true.
doing everything. I mean, it's point of view that I'm
No,
currently
yeah, yeah.
exploring. Let's put it
Sorry.
that way. No, I like that, Shane. You give me reality checks. But there's this, I'm very dramatic. You know, my original art was theater. Um, and I think there was this definite sense of exactly the same thing. That's why I say ask why, because I've said before that I felt like I was just living in debt because I hadn't become a creative success yet. And I definitely blamed myself for it. And I had many beliefs about qualities that I lacked. Too cowardly, not quick enough to take action, not diligent enough, reluctant to enter certain uncomfortable situations, shy away from this, shy away from that, shy away from this. But when I re examined it, a lot of this steering of what I was doing, although it's good to examine your beliefs and see where you're anxious, a lot of it genuinely was just not being excited about certain things.
Hmm. Absolutely. And you talk about this concept of like being in debt. Um,
a good one,
And I
right?
think you've sort of just talked about what that means, but what do you feel, looking back at this journey that you've been on, like what the deficit was, what you owed, who you owed it to, and what exactly you owed them, if that makes
So
sense.
this is gonna get deep, but I had a dream last night and I was crying today about it.
Oh,
And it don't take it literally because it's a dream, but I had a dream that I was in my father's house, but he said that he preferred this person who was in an older class than me in school. That class always seemed very cool, and this person was very put together, and she traveled the world, worked on ranches and stuff. I met her later, and my father just said, "Yeah, I do like them better than you." And in that dream, that crushed me so much because it meant I was worthless because I was lesser. I wasn't the top pick. I wasn't the first pick. And in my dream, there was a beautiful raspberry tree. They grew on trees in the dream. I can't explain it, but all of a sudden I was holding an enormous bough with it was beautiful raspberries in the sun, and they looked like they were hanging from tassels with the sunlight on them. It was the most beautiful branch, like a laden bough, right? And it represented life, living, and joy and creativity. And I said, I don't want it. And I was screaming and crying like a baby, and I was tossing it aside. And I knew in the dream that it was embarrassing to reject it this way, to reject myself and to reject life like that. But I couldn't stop crying and trampling on the raspberry branch and saying, I don't want it, I don't want it. And it's not literal. I'm sure my father loves me very much. But the point is that there's this concept in me that's often been like, if I am not, that I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy. And so I reject who I really am and I reject life. And I don't want to be that person. It just, I don't want to live with that level of shame. The Enneagram 4, if you read about the Enneagram, there's kind of this idea of shame. But it's just another archetype that's useful. This has gone on for a bit, but I think what I'm saying is that I had such a strong sense of unworthiness from childhood. You know, that father left me when I was 2 to raise my half sister. Uh, so there's something there, but I can't say that that's for sure my origin story. But my point is that again, it's just a typical archetype that I guess 1 in 9 people supposedly have according to the Enneagram. But it's this idea. There's these ideas of fear, uh, and then power struggle, and then there's people who have shame, and I have one of the shame ones. The idea is just that I feel really unworthy, and I'm afraid that I myself am not worthy. So I think over time, my genuine inspiration or liking of creative things outside me, like seeing some theater productions, hearing some music, getting actually motivated in a good way, this little bit somehow became poisoned where it became okay, if I did that, I would be really cool because those are the coolest people and the most magical people and the most creative people. If I did that, I would like and respect myself, and other people would like and respect me. But that's backwards, obviously. But I just had this sense of I'm not going to be worthy until I prove that I am. So that was that sense of terrible debt. And I can't even describe the things that I've done in my life to try to get ahead
that's so
in
interesting.
various ways. Yes.
Because there's almost like a a point in there, I guess, like almost like in the dream where you're turning away from this beautiful tree to like be jealous of, kind of a teenager who's probably not as
Yes.
cool as you, or whatever, teenagers suck. But like in a similar way, like you read beautiful books, you listen to beautiful music, you enjoy art, and instead of enjoying the piece of art, your mind kind of goes to, I must want to be that person. And it probably goes back to our we were saying about like our idolization of artists as like these better
Absolutely.
beings. Like, you know, it's not
Absolutely.
enough
Yes.
to just get solace and comfort and transcendence from this thing. It's, I'm less worthy because they contributed that to the world and I didn't.
And in the dream afterwards, I took poison and killed myself. So what I'm saying is that it was a rejection of life itself. Because you know what it is? I'm afraid, and this is maybe just me, I think every artist has their own journey. I'm afraid that either I don't have a passion or I'm just a very boring person. You know? I'm afraid that if I, you know what, first of all, because I felt like I needed to accomplish things, I never cared about how I felt because I didn't value things that excited me because I didn't think that mattered as much as just making myself do things. But now I see. Now, here's where the why and the enjoyment comes together. Here's where I agree with you, is that I see now that I'm older that the people in my same venues, acting, music, whatever it was, the people who succeeded, who went on to succeed, were the people not who wanted to succeed the most, but who really loved what they were doing. I used to know a guy, and he loved to. We were overlap. We weren't in the same acting class, but like we were in sort of rival acting schools across town, and we got to be friends. And he just genuinely had a real enthusiasm for like martial arts movies and for being physical and also for theater. And now he's like a famous stunt double and weapons guy in Hollywood. And I can't say if he's happy with his life or not, but he's definitely very successful. And knowing him, it was just a big game to him. He was never like, I hope I make it one day. Instead, he was just like, let's dress up as robots and then we can have a sword fight like samurais. Like,
Hmm.
he just genuinely liked it. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
believe, and you can tell me what you think, but I believe that the people who succeed are the ones who genuinely enjoy the work itself.
I think that makes perfect sense. You never read something that's like, okay, this person's heart definitely wasn't into it, but it's great to read. This is a lot of fun. This is an absolute banger. Because, like, you can absolutely tell if someone doesn't give a shit. Because if someone doesn't care and they're always looking toward the next thing, like, they're not concentrating on what they're doing and they're
mm,
not expressing themselves. They're not adding, like, an extra perspective to the world that wasn't there before, and you're not getting to, like, jump
mm.
into their mind and explore it with them. They're just, you know, putting out the next piece of content because they need to.
That's a good point. Not putting everything. I think when you really love something, you just get really more creative and you're drawing on depths of yourself.
We talked about like some of the projects that we've done. Like when I finished this miniseries Liminal, I should say when I started writing it, it just it was one of the first times in my life when a creative thing came to me. I felt very passionate about writing it. I didn't have any plans for it. And I actually that excitement took me all the way to the end. And it took like a year and a half
Mm,
to like end, finish writing this project. Even though there's nothing I could possibly do with it at this juncture because it has to be animation. There was just enough fire there for me to go an entire
fire.
project's length. And like any time that I've ever tried to make something commercial, it's completely fallen through because I
Mm.
just don't think I don't know if I can uh write for a check.
And then we both know somebody else who gets very excited about being entrepreneurial, about networking. Where else can I post this? Where else can I link this? And that's part of their excitement. Can I ask you about Subliminal though? Because I read it. It's a great work. Absolute banger. I was relating so hard to Beige the other day, but I can't tell you why yet. Oh my god. Anyway, so it's obviously your joy in writing it comes out. I think it's a huge success as a piece. It's
Oh.
very bizarre, but somehow very warm at the same time. And it obviously is not something that you could do by numbers in the sense of like, here is the story structure, and now there will be a plot. It was obviously a lot of digging into yourself. My question is though, you said you were excited about the idea, and then the idea carried you through. Was your excitement something that you had to did it guide you at different stages? Were you always following your excitement when you made different decisions about the work?
Oh
Or
yeah,
how did you keep your excitement going throughout a whole project like that?
that's so interesting because this is something that I've done a lot of thinking about because the excitement does definitely change in texture. Um,
Ah,
at the
well
beginning,
said.
like the excitement was just so I think I told you this. Like I was watching Bee and Puppy Cat, and Bee and Puppy Cat,
Great
I,
show.
the story just didn't particularly sit with me, but something about the atmosphere was very appealing, and these characters just like sprung into my head, and like things that they were doing just sprung into my head, and for a while,
Hmm.
like the joy was just like writing scenes, writing the characters, explaining what they were doing, like kind of piecing together the world that they lived in. So at the beginning, it would just like pure play, just the fun of
You
like
had an interest and you kind of fed the interest.
yeah, or just like I'm like literally just like banging these two dolls
For
together so
fun.
they can fight. Like that's kind of how it
Ah,
felt. And like and then I think toward the time that I began structuring it, and realizing that I could use I that's the first time I used like the tarot deck as like the structure. I was like, oh, that because tarot was also something I was interested in, so I was able to bring in another interest of mine. Okay, this is how I can like kind of balance this out with this other thing that I'm also into.
Because you reinterpreted the tarot as a sort of cosmic process in another document, and then you were able to turn that into an outlining
Yes, and
technique,
I
right?
can't believe that's cosmic process is a good way to describe it because I still have no idea what this is, the thing that I came up with for tarot, but I still have no idea what I wrote.
It's a trip to read. It's kind of a journey.
Ah, okay, yeah, yeah. No, I guess I used it as like a hero's journey, basically, so that makes sense.
Uh,
Um, but so I was able to feed the project with things that I was excited about, and then I about halfway through when I'd written about half of it in draft form, and maybe it was completely outlined, but the outline still needed to be changed, and I hadn't edited yet. I started to lose a little bit of steam, and it became a little bit more rote. And I think at that point, the joy and the excitement came from the routine. I had like this nice little um, setup area where I could do it, and I would always like have coffee, and I have like these pretty fairy lights, and like there was like a joy to like I'm gonna spend 2 hours in this world with the characters that I love.
so the texture of the excitement had changed,
Yeah,
as you put it earlier.
right, yeah. But I don't think it's always. I don't think the joy always feels like incandescent, like ecstasy the entire time. I think sometimes it feels like the joy of building a house and realizing that you've done a good
I
job.
mean, am I right? Am I right that all that really matters is that it's slightly more interesting than not doing
I think that's probably true. Yeah. Would I
it?
rather sit still and do nothing for these 2 hours?
I mean, we live in a busy world. You could play a game on your phone, you could call a friend, you could make food, but you chose to write instead.
Yeah, definitely. It felt like a worthwhile thing to do with my time. So, what about you? When you get into projects, what does the feeling of the excitement, the thing that drives you forward, change? Or I know you've talked about like realizing that some of the excitement isn't there in certain ways.
I'm going to need a few years and then I'll come back to you.
Gotcha. Well, back.
Uh, Honestly, I am questioning my beliefs a lot. I'll tell you something about the idea of excitement or passion. I realized that I was definitely defining excitement or passion out of anxiety as a thing that I would love to have achieved when instead of something that I genuinely enjoy doing. And I'm at a bit of a crisis, speaking of the hero's journey, because I'm questioning whether what I actually feel genuinely passionate about. There's obviously things I enjoy doing, but I'm definitely not. I feel like the things that I've done, I'll say acting and novels because I've put the most time into them, but I've done many other things. I definitely didn't have, I would say, a pure passion for those things. It was very impure, very muddled with ideas of self hatred and that debt. So it's almost a revelation to me to think that to look around and see that some people genuinely do have a work that they enjoy working at, as it were, a passion. People say, "Oh, what would you do if you could do things all day?" And some people are like, "Oh, I love painting houses," or I love working with animals, or it's I've got to write, or I've got to paint landscapes. Okay, question for you, Shane, because I honestly don't know the answer. Are people who have a passion in that sense, like my friend who ended up being the stunt guy who just got fascinated with things, are they prodigies? Do they look at the world differently? Do we all have that potential and it's a matter of choosing how to spend our time?
I don't know. I wonder if there's like a certain amount of privilege to it. I think like some of the greatest artists that have like sort of persevered through time have like patrons or they were independently wealthy. So they kind of didn't have to feel like I need to succeed in this thing or I'm not gonna have any money and I have to figure out something else or like I'm tired from
They might be immune to the anxiety because they don't have that fear that something will not support them or be a waste of time.
possibly. But I also have to think that there is such a thing as like genius through effort. I think that you are able to what am I trying to say? Cultivate excitement and passion, and eventually creativity and talent. So I don't know what it is that like.
Cultivate excitement and passion. Yeah, now that would be the first question because I think in our culture we're very familiar with the idea of, we you work hard and perspiration more than inspiration or whatever it is. That idea that you spend all these hours on something and then you become great at it. But how would you say we cultivate things like passion and excitement? I almost feel I've given this metaphor before, but I almost feel like I'm saying I've never been in love. It looks really fun to be in love. How do I get that with an art? You said that maybe as writers we reflect too much, that it's why? Why would we be reflecting too much? And why would that interfere with our ability to cultivate passion? Do you think passion is more physical, that if I'm playing music, it's easier to get carried away than if I'm free writing?
I think it has to do more with like I don't think words and the things that they do completely inspire and enthrall you in the same way that music can.
Ah, I completely agree. I completely agree. My passion these days has been dance because when you're dancing, you're dancing. There's no result that you're going for. When you're jamming on the guitar, you viscerally are just jamming, and inspiration is coming through you physically, kinetically. I don't need to plan how to dance. I put on the music and I find ways to explore it. And there is things like free writing, but yeah, it's a mental exercise, isn't it? You never think, "Oh, I'm doing it. I'm doing it." Because there's so much complexity as well.
Yeah, I think that that kind of effort, the kind of mental effort, can just feel rather than like when you engage in a hobby like dancing or painting, you kind of feel like you're letting go of thought. You're letting go of like ideas and things that are kind of plague you throughout the day. You might sit down and do thinking. That's not saying that all kinds other kinds of art don't involve thought. Obviously they do. But I think there's probably in some ways a distinction between planning the art and then just getting to do it and express. You learn the choreography, but then you get to dance. And I think with writing, because it's so much, because it is kind of arduous, and you can really only write for like 2 to 4 hours at a time, depending on how good you're feeling. I think it's exhausting. I think that's like the main thing. It feels tiring.
And I think that's how I discovered that I was operating from anxiety with my whole project because I was so unhappy and I couldn't finish something that I was working on. I was writing reams, but I never liked it. And I was rigorously examining, okay, is it my inner critic? Is it I fears of publication? Do I hate the industry? Do I doubt my ability to network? What is going on here? And eventually it led me to more clarity. I think these disruptions to your art can be valuable.
Disruption, like internal disruptions of
Internal disruptions. I mean, external ones too, of course. You can question, like, why, why your wife starts shouting at you every time you get out the easel or whatever. Maybe you're in an abusive
yeah.
marriage, but, uh, I think more it's internal disruption. Okay, here's my theory. I processed what you were saying about the difficulty of writing. Here's my theory. I think with writing, you are less fundamentally limited in your choice of expression. There's less limitations on it because writing requires very few materials and there's not distinct styles of it. It's basically like you get a pen and some paper and you're able to express, anything. You can write rhyming poetry, you can write a horror novel, you can write one thing one day and another thing the next day. And it's true that like with music and dance and painting, there's an infinite variety, but usually you tend to focus on one style, and there are kind of rules because it's a physical medium. Whether you're playing classical guitar or you're learning ecstatic dance or you're doing painting with watercolors, there are limitations in the medium that actually make it a little easier because you have to work within those limitations. Sure, you can push the boundaries in all kinds of ways. You can use your own hair to be your watercolor brush or whatever you want to do, and that's fun for some people like to push the envelope. But the moment you say I'm going to do a watercolor painting on this medium-sized watercolor pad and I want it to be an erotic portrait, then you're kind of limited in how you can execute it. And it's going to come out very differently for different people. You can learn techniques, you can do different things, but there's strong limitations once you sit down to do a specific project. And that's just not the same if you sit down to write an erotic novel, because it has a lot more complexity, a lot more length, and there's just less
Mm.
limitation in writing.
So is there sort of a an overwhelming amount of possibilities when you?
Huh, I
Hmm.
would say so.
I think that's a good point. Especially because like just about any kind of written medium uses the same exact tools. They all use words. They all like try to make the words sound nice and pretty together, and they all try to convey meaning in a very distinct grammatical way. Whereas like you can create differences in art just by changing materials and changing the medium.
And I, yes, and I think that's why artists love formulas. They love how to write a novel, how to write a fantasy novel, how to write a cozy mystery. Even very sort of esoteric writers will often go for something, but it's, yeah, there's just so much. It's just so much more open than most music. It reminds me of Brian Eno, the music producer. He's famous for helping bands create some interesting albums, U2 or Talking Heads, whatever. And he would often put artificial restrictions on what they were allowed to do. He would be like, okay, you can only play a C note on the bass there. And you with the flute, you're not allowed to play it all. Wait in the hallway. And the lead singer is only allowed to grunt. Okay, go. And you would get some really interesting things. They got more creative once the limitations were placed on them because they were world class musicians. But if you let them all just all play all the time, you just end up with another rock record. I think there's a little bit more of a sense of, yeah, less of a path to follow. So writing has this sort of, I like the shamanistic aspect of it where you're just going forth into the mist. So in Finnish Nordic mythology, well, I'm going to say Finnish mythology because that's the one I know, but the shamanic underworld, what we in the New Age thing call the template reality or the dream realm, but it's where you go when you shamanic journey. And you can make changes there that impact the real world. But the point is, it's full of mist. It's an almost empty place with fog and mist and many other wandering shamans and creatures and doorways and gateways, but it's hazy. You can't naturally find your way. It's not linear reality. So there's this idea, it's the same thing as writing. You need to have your own sense of guidance or your own magic tools or companions that will help you go because there's just not a highway you can drive down. The writer is a hunter. It's the same idea as a dream reality. It's very similar in that it's your imagination that's creating it, and the only limitations are mental. So when I say the shamanic mental landscape, I literally mean that you are in the same mental space where your mind can provide anything to you. You may even be surprised by it. All writers mention that. But even if you have a formula to follow, what actually appears out of the mist is going to be magical, shamanic. It's going to surprise you and, like you said earlier, give you information about yourself. Every writing, every piece of fiction is a journey to the shamanic underworld, and I literally mean the same part of your brain.
Do you think writing can surprise you when you're writing and you're doing so much mental focus on what you're doing? Is there potential there for like actually like exciting yourself as you're going and surprising yourself with what you write? Is there any part of you that accesses like a
I
different?
mean, is that a question? Absolutely. I do a lot of free writing for one thing, but also I think writing for me is a form of channeling, of letting images come and ideas come. And absolutely, there are things that will. I'm sure you've had the feeling of things falling into place or getting information
Yeah.
about your characters, things that seem to be true, things that belong in the world, things that you're just inspired to write. Like there's some scenes in Subliminal where there's just little notes about the crazy things that are happening in that world. Like I bet you didn't plan all of those. I bet some of them you just discovered in
Oh
the
yeah.
shamanic mist.
Absolutely. I and I sort of wonder how do you the way we describe it and the way you've just described it with this the idea of this shamanic realm that you're wandering through and you're hunting down these things that are hiding in the mist. It's so clear when you think about writing that it's a fascinating and exciting thing. And I wonder how that gets why exactly that gets converted into, as you've described, like, a debt. I felt the exact same way. How it gets turned into, even if you're just
Hmm.
writing for yourself, even if you're um, just sitting down and saying, I'm going to do 20 minutes
Absolutely.
of free writing, how that, how the slog creeps in is I guess what I'm saying.
Anxiety versus excitement. Absolutely. It's a good question. I mean, Bashar would say it's because you have any kind of negative beliefs. I give my example of having beliefs about value and what I need to accomplish to have value. I think, okay, right now I'm imagining that I sit down to write, but I'm divided in my mind. Part of me is excited to go into the realm because I love to pull things out of thin air. I've always loved the magical aspect of anything. I started out as a musician, went on to dance, went on to acting from there, and went on to piano from there. It is, but my point is that the magical aspect of things has always been fascinating to me. And I started out as a free writer. My mom teaches it, so there's this excitement. But then when I start to think about how the piece that I'm going to do fits into the world, I immediately begin to feel anxiety. This is just me, but you might relate to this. If I say, okay, what do I want to write? Then suddenly, oh, it has to be a certain way so that people will react to it a certain way. So it has to be a short story so that we'll have structure in a certain way so that people will like it. And then how does this fit into things that I feel like I need to accomplish? Because I feel that I write my morning pages, I write my journal, I can put characters, I can do anything. But when I'm writing a structured piece, I become anxious or conscious about the value of the finished work or what it's even for. And it becomes no longer an exploration of its, I'm no longer honoring this sort of shamanic experience. I'm trying to produce a product for consumption, and I turn my gaze outward instead of inward. And I think that makes me not only nervous, but I lose touch with the interesting part of it. And I don't want to feel ever like I'm trying to trick myself into producing something because that also shoots me in the foot. I think with things like the artist way, where it's like, okay, this time I'm going to use my inner child. I'm going to use free writing. I'm going to use archetypes, and I'm going to do all the fun stuff I like, and I'm going to use that to trick myself into producing work. It's because I'm trying to enslave my shamanic experience to pay off my debt, to prove that I'm a worthy person and now I'm successful. And that energy around becoming a worthy person and being successful by succeeding creatively is entirely negative. And so the universe does not support me. My mental setup does not support me. There's no genuine warmth toward that idea whatsoever. It's just an avoidance of pain.
I, it's so interesting because like I've encountered this idea before of like, if you want to be a writer, you have to find a way to make money at it because a writer uh somehow can't subsist on like writing as a hobby or writing after work or something like that.
Or we despise hobby writers. We say, oh, well, of course, if you just want to do it as a hobby, you don't even
Oh
have to
yeah,
work for it.
absolutely.
Hobby writers, they don't care if they're completely shitty. If you write as a hobby, it means you have no pride in your work
Hmm.
whatsoever.
But I wonder like how do you write as a job? Like how is that? I don't know. It seems completely backwards to me because
I think in our society, we equate all value with money.
that's probably true. But hmm, I also wonder if there's like I don't know. I wonder if there is something else there because it's like last night when I was like questioning my inner emperor and I was attributing all of these like horrible
Hmm.
things to him like, oh, you just want me to look cool, you just want me to like look like a good artist or a cool person that does lots of interesting things and never makes a fool of himself. And he kind of responded saying like, that's not true. I have a higher image of you because I have high expectations of you, and that's not necessarily connected to how people perceive me or if you're going to make money. It's I have this expectation for you. Um, I'm your parent, and I expect better of you, something like that. So like I
Does this still feel like a negative aspect of the emperor, right? That's what it sounds like to me.
well, it definitely feels negative, but I must imagine that there's got to be some. that there is some positivity there. I think he is trying to communicate an important thing, but I'm not sure how to interpret
Mm.
that positively. So I guess that's what I'm trying to like bring to this conversation of
Oh, there's something I remember about dream interpretation. Uh, if you have a dream and it's negative, like the one I had last night, there was the example I was given. There was someone who a voice told them to go back to their hometown, and they hated their hometown, and they woke up and they were like, "Well, that was obviously very negative because it gave me bad advice." But the real truth is that dreams are to give you a choice. If something really bad happens in a dream, you can wake up and be like, okay, is that how I see myself as a victim or as a monster or as someone who's decaying or whatever you dreamed? Or do I choose to see myself as something else? So dreams will present a scenario and you're able in your waking life to look at the opposite of that and choose it if you prefer.
I don't know. I guess I think there must be some way to interpret this external sense of I need to be successful um, in a way that is not only constructive but actually informs your understanding of yourself as a writer. I'm just thinking of this as we're going now, so I don't
Mm.
necessarily know what I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
at.
Yeah.
But
No, no. Makes sense.
but maybe the image of uh I want to be, Ernest Hemingway or something. I want to be the Homer. I want to be whatever the archetype
Yeah,
of
see,
a
it's so positive to have a vision. I think that's great. I think as long as you're not attached to it, like I am upset or I am bad if I don't get it, I think it's a great way to tune yourself up to fantasize, to think. You spend 15 minutes just picturing your ideal, what you really want to go for, and then you completely forget about it for the rest of the day and just have a good day. But the point is that you kind of tuned in to like that spark in yourself. Like I'm imagining a future where, yeah, I'm great and powerful writer and everybody comes to me for advice because I'm the smartest. Like that is so positive. That's energy that you can use. I think it only becomes negative when you say, "Oh, but actually my life isn't like that yet, so it means I'm a shitty person."
yeah.
Right?
And maybe you're right in
The vision is so valuable. Huh. That's what an emperor does, right? He puts on all the pomp and circumstance. Our empire is great. As you see, I am the living manifestation of God, and the fields will be fertile.
yeah,
Watch while I fuck this cow.
as all emperors do.
I've only lived in like a select number of empires. Maybe things are different here.
well,
I'm from Iowa.
that's an empire in a way. I
We,
don't know.
the Iowa of the future. They've just conquered most of the known universe and planted it with corn.
1,000 years in the future, it's going to be Star Wars, but like
But
whatever, like the
Iowa is
Empire
blue.
is going to be like the Iowa Empire.
Yeah, instead of Stormtrooper, there's just the Hawkeyes. I think that's really an interesting I think it comes back to the anxiety versus excitement question there because I think it's so wonderful, yeah, to be positive about a vision. And I think it's so negative to devalue yourself because you're not at the vision yet.
Do we think that there is a way to, I don't know, maybe if you've achieved this, but is there a way to divorce the positive um, effects of having a vision for yourself as an artist and as a fully realized person, uh, and the negative aspect of, oh, I haven't achieved that yet?
I don't know the answer, but
Hmm.
I do think it might, for me, becoming conscious of the distinction
Hmm.
felt like a huge turning point. That was almost the whole point of this year for me to be able to feel no, not to be able to feel the difference between anxiety and excitement, but to care, to believe genuinely that it's important for me to be excited and to feel positive and that that is the most beneficial thing I can do for my career and my progress and my art. And my goal that I often said was to create a great body of work and to be loved and to be influential for my great wonderful thing that I express. But I think that knowing in my innermost self that being excited and positive and passionate is actually the most, perhaps the only reliable road, that I cannot cheat and that it's good that I can't cheat because I don't want to actually force myself to be miserable for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I think that's like that's probably the way to frame it then. Like
I mean, that's all I have so far. Feel free to.
yeah, like you don't have all the secrets of the universe yet.
I'm
um
working on it. Yeah, it's
One
interesting
day.
for me because I feel, and I don't think this is bad, but I feel like I'm sort of temporarily in between visions. Or the ones that I do have, if I create a vision for myself, it's very positive, but it'll just be like oddly specific and it'll melt quickly. I'll just be like, what if I'm making these pancakes and somebody breaks in the window and says these are the best pancakes ever, and I get a job as like a pancake taster and I'm famous? Like that's great. It's positive energy. It gets me in a great mood, so I embrace it. But it's not the same as saying this is my singular passion. Like I'm going to be a kayak instructor or die. That's a great anime, or it should be. Shane, do you have a passion? Is that a thing?
I've wondered about this because on the one hand, I'm not the most sensory person. I tend to intellectualize a lot. And I think sometimes we think of passion as like the muse takes over your body and oh, I just hit my mic. The muse takes over your body and like you become so overwhelmed that you have to create. And it's a very emotional thing, and I think I just don't experience life quite to that, not degree, but in quite that perspective. Um, but as for a calling,
You're right.
I
Passion is kind of an interesting choice of words, so I welcome your redefinitions here. Yeah, maybe calling is more
well, I guess
to the
I
point because we do have that image of passion, and we should question that.
yeah. I don't know, I think like when you think of passion, you think of like sex or you think of like Jesus or something, and you think of like very visceral like images. Um,
Yeah,
and
I
I
think that's interesting when you say that. Yeah, with the purple passion kind of idea.
calling, I think
Do you like that
I
better?
I think it just probably makes more sense for someone of my temperament, maybe. Um,
That's
that's
true.
not to say
I get like mental creativity and sexual creativity. The energies in my body are so similar that I just get confused.
well, that's a thing. That's like a it's a Freudian idea of like sublimation, right? Like uh
Oh yeah, that's when they have like a thing of frozen nitrogen. It turns into a gas.
oh, I don't know what that is.
I'm sorry. Please go on.
Maybe that's a thing. Maybe that's where Freud got it.
Okay, so you're thinking about one of the philosophy tube
No.
type videos that you watch, and I'm thinking about a guy who came to my science class when I was
Well,
12. Okay.
we're somewhere in the middle because
Who was that man? What were his
I
credentials?
oh yeah, yeah. But maybe that's probably where Freud got it actually. You're probably right. Cuz it's all desire is like
Freud got it from doing cocaine and looking at the ceiling.
uh it's like all desire is sexual desire and like but we can't express sexual desire at all times like we can't literally just go up to somebody we are attracted to and have sex with them on the street so we sublimate that into like our artistic interests our artistic passions so like that's
I'm not sure I necessarily agree with his chain of sequence of
I don't know
events,
if I've
but
expressed it
like,
correctly to be
if you
fair but yes there is there is recognized in like the zeitgeist a connection between like artistic passion and like sexual desire. Um and I don't necessarily
yeah,
know
I
if
mean, it's
that's
definitely in all the symbolism, the idea of creativity, creative fertility. But I interrupted you for a question of definitions, and I really, yeah, let's say we use the word calming because that sounds a little bit more, yeah, that's what I'm kind of saying, more like a life
mhm.
purpose.
well
So that sounds a little bit like you're the chosen one and your purpose is to like stab the dark crystal. So
maybe
let's say
but maybe
calling.
you would experience that as a more of a passion like my passion for this thing. And I maybe it's just a temperament thing where I don't I don't know if I don't know if I work that way, but maybe some people do. And but I would say that for me, I do feel like writing is my calling in that um, I have felt glimpses of I've seen glimpses of the things that I'm most intrigued by writing. I've written things and been
Mm.
like, there's a person back here in the back of my head that I want to meet, and I just saw them for a second, or something like that, or like
Ah,
this is
yes,
the
yes.
this is the child that made that character, and now I know why they made that character. Or like this is the thought that I had when I was on a mountain in Iceland or whatever, and I don't know why I cared about it, and now I do. Like, and I think that's what it like.
Mm.
It's for me, it's about things making sense and something being revealed that I really only get
Ah.
with writing. So I think that's how I would conceive of it. I don't know if that's how everyone would consider their calling. I don't know if I'm making sense. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I think you painted a picture of what it's like for you inside the writing process, and that makes it compelling for you.
What do you think
Yeah.
what do you think a passion or a calling would feel like, and do you feel like you've had glimpses of it or
So I think there's different definitions, but, and I'm still working on my personal idea of that, but I think it does change from time to time for people as far as how they express themselves. Like you might move from doing one thing to doing another. You might go start out being a sports star and go into coaching or whatever. But I think that there are, I think that passion, I think that excitement and interest, fascination, I think we all have things we're drawn toward. And I think for me, what I'm trying to express, and I'm making this up as I go along, is that the idea that if you always move toward things you genuinely like and that interest you and you pursue them, they lead you to other interesting things. Passion is a kind of trail, maybe.
yes.
And I don't know if for some people it tends to seem the same. Like every day I wake up and I'm excited to engineer another car or write another novel. Some people, they might have that outward way of expressing it, though inside themselves, they might feel more like I get to maybe instead of writing another novel, they say, "Ooh, another day exploring the motivation of killers in my horror novels," or maybe the car designer thinks, "Ooh, another day of solving problems," or I think there's a dynamic that people enjoy. I'm kind of asking because I don't know. I like the idea. I like the idea of okay. I wrote this down too. It's gonna sound really childish, right? But I've been thinking about it, and I'm not gonna decide not to hold back on this podcast.
Totally for
I've killed two mosquitoes while we were on air, so I'm just being murdered
yeah,
for public
you've
fun now at
completely
this point.
changed identities.
So we already have snuff in the podcast, so we might as well just make it
Go for it.
weirder. So I've been examining my definitions still about why I want what I want, why I do what I do, where I need to go from here, right? And there's I kind of examined that definition that, oh, I almost don't want to have a new passion the way I had like acting and novels. Why? Because I define passion as something that I want to achieve. I was thinking, I said this earlier. And also, I associate that idea with great. Once you select your passion, that just signs you up for tons and tons of hard work. And then you're not as good as other people. And you compare yourself, and then you work on your craft forever. And then you try to find a place for it in the world, and then you can't market it. And then you have no success in the marketplace, and then you're rejected, and it's all over. This happened to me in like multiple industries. Once you decide you're doing a passion, it's just a giant exercise in suffering and failure. It's just a terrible uphill battle. You just get signed up for like the Sisyphus 401k. No, that's a that's a retirement plan. Like a the Sisyphus 5k run, and it's just terrible. It's a terrible idea. So no wonder I'm resisting the whole idea of having a passion of that definition, right? Um, but then I thought, okay, let's say I could have anything. I was on the bus. You know how your mind wanders? It was raining too. Best thing.
Oh yeah,
So window seat, right? One of the seats where nobody's next to you,
that sounds
so you don't
lovely.
have to worry if they're gonna like suddenly attack you. Uh, and that happened to a guy once on a Greyhound bus, and his neighbor was having like a psychotic episode and beheaded him. So never go on the Greyhound ever. So I've done it. I don't recommend it. So, basically, on the bus, I was like, all right, so that's interesting. I don't really want to have a passion in the way that I'm defining it. That's funny, because I just think that means just terrible enslavement to trying to be good at something and failing and suffering and feeling like trash. And so, fine, I hate doing things. You're supposed to take action on your excitement, take action on your passion. I don't like doing stuff. I never liked it as a kid. I've never been active. I've never been active a day in my life. I don't take initiative. I don't have the
Mm.
initiative. If I'm only going to work to act on things that excite me in the moment, maybe I'll just never do anything. And I thought, okay, is that what I want? I can lie on the couch. I have a job. That's fine. Well, not really. I still want something else. Okay, fine. What do you want? What do you want? You have anything. It's a magical world. You can have. Do you want, people to show up and cover you with flowers? What do you want? And I have a lively imagination. So I was thinking, all right, what about, you know what I want? I want it to be like in a fantasy novel, like a young adult novel, where they everyone has they go, you have a gift, you have a magic power. You
Mm.
have a gift. I've never seen anyone with a gift like that. That's amazing. And your gift is so great. And here you can have a job immediately. And now everyone will respect you for having a magic gift.
Is it that acceptance intrinsically, or is it the idea that uh you want the thing that you're passionate about, but the the idea of, you know, crushing your soul with horrible labor in a gross capitalistic market is like unbearable, and getting having like a job fall in your lap is what you want.
Yeah, I think it's basically that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
This
completely understand that.
fantasy, two fantasies. One that I am really valuable and worthy because I have some kind of gift, so I don't need to worry about that anymore. I almost don't care what it is. If I can heal people, or I can make it rain, or I can just be really, I don't know, or a real life gift, like Mozart playing the piano or something. Just you have a gift. I had this fantasy that I was like actually turned out to have like, oh, there's a great Seinfeld bit where he says they used to give you the hearing test at school, and he always wanted the tester to be like, what you actually heard was a cotton ball touching a piece of felt. We think you have super hearing. We're going to tell the government about you.
Oh yeah,
This fantasy that you turn out to be special. Um, I want to be, I guess I just want to feel special, to know that I'm really good at one thing, especially good. No one else is as good. And yeah, to immediately be whisked away from any kind of like normal job that I have, to be immediately granted like, the lifestyle and the comfort of being in the right place, vocation. You are the person in the tribe who can talk to oak trees. You're going to be the oak tree talker. It's over. You don't have to worry anymore. That's your job for the rest of your life, and you're magically good at it, so you don't even have to worry about retraining. That's what I want.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's interesting also that you mentioned that, because like it being more than money, but having a place in society is like the one who does that thing. I remember there was this one time in like high school, like I hated being in school. I was like the rebel. Like I had to resist everything that we were told to
Rebel.
do. Um, but I liked myself as an artist. I thought my art was good. And there's this other girl that was
Mm.
also good at art. And there was something where like as a class we had to create something, and the teacher turned to like that other kid and was like, "Oh, you're good at art, so maybe you could do the art part." And I was like so upset that I was not the art kid,
Ooh.
even though I hated being like participating, and I hated like pretending like I gave a shit about school. You're like, you're the preps, I hate that. But like
Oh.
it was upsetting, even though I was not going to get compensated for it, and even though art is not generally what I would consider to be, you know, a calling or whatever. It was upsetting to like
No, what
not
they
be.
tell you're good at when you are young or not good at is so damaging.
Oh yeah, yeah, or just to like not be like the one who's good at that. It feels good to be like
Yes,
the funny one, the one who's good at something. I don't know, like yeah, the
absolutely.
guy. Um,
Yes.
yeah, and I think it is a little bit soul crushing when you're just one of 8 billion guys that that exist.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or if there's just somebody, and it's funny because, you grow up and then that person is mediocre and they ended up becoming a CPA or something. It's not like they were the king of all art, but you just never really, I think when you're young, you just haven't really developed that resilience, and you just kind of used to there being sort of authorities outside of you. So yeah, what people tell you you're good at and bad at kind of does shape you for sure. I think maybe that, maybe I have something from that. But and then I examined what I was fantasizing about. And then I was like, well, but I definitely believe that the world doesn't work that way. That if you want something, talent doesn't matter, only hard work matters. And I hate work, and it gives me only pain and suffering. So I guess I'll just never be good at anything. The fantasy of being good at something. Like I'm hungry for it.
Yeah, I've even like had thoughts of like if I was like the one person who knew like three or four languages, that would be special. Or like
Ah,
if I could
ah.
play. I'm not a big music person, but if I could play the guitar amazingly and like people knew me for that, yeah,
Yeah. I just, it's such a big thing. But I realize that I don't have to really work hard and create a great work of art or a great project. I just have to kill all the other artists.
that's a really good idea. We can get together on that, and then you and I can just duke it out once the other ones are dead.
We should stop recording.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you'll win that anyway. So
Oh my goodness. I like that you assume that I would win in a physical fight to the death. I find that very flattering.
no question, you do martial arts every day, and my biggest
I
thing is
do
like I go
yoga.
on a leisurely
I
walk.
do yoga.
No, you do fantasy fighting, right? Don't you?
I did for a while. I was doing
Okay.
my punches, but it actually just turned into dance because it turned out to have the shamanic journeying aspect. So
Okay.
I think we're probably about evenly matched.
I don't know. I mean, if I sit on you, then that could probably do some damage, but
Right. So this
if
way,
you hit
so
me, I will be out.
are you saying that our dramatic fight to the death has turned into me fleetly running away while you attempt to sit on me and crush my skull?
No, I think it would be like, I don't know, like I would be like a Kung Fu Panda situation where like you're actually like exerting real like artistic effort in like all the moves that you're doing, and I'm just kind of flopping around, but
My
because
mental
I'm
image of me in a fight is me running away holding my glasses protectively.
well, the glasses would get you, I think.
This is, yeah. I mean, it would be more dangerous if I took them off, though.
Well, I
It
got
would
this
depend on
gut.
the a lot would depend on the terrain. I think I could win in like an uneven or rocky environment
Oh, you gotta go to like
because your
a.
leg still isn't completely healed.
Oh yeah, you can really rely
I
on
feel
on
like
the.
if the terrain was really rugged, I would probably have the advantage because you would
That's a
have to
great
climb
idea.
with the injured leg.
I think we could
Oh,
just
I'm
go and
sorry. But I
yeah.
would never kill you, Shane. Not unless I
Oh, okay,
really had to.
gotcha. We'll just kill the other ones then.
I think this was the plot of Highlander.
I don't know what that is. Was
Oh,
it?
never mind. It's a TV show my mom used to watch.
Ah,
It was that
were
these
they like
immortal
a?
Scottish guys, and they would go around cutting each other's heads off with broadswords, and they were hot, and they would just be like, "I am immortal," and there would be like a guitar solo. Am
That
I
sounds like a
am I the only
confusing
person who
conjugation of things. The Scottish people who chop each other's heads off, and then there's a guitar solo. The end.
Yeah, my mom loved it. She had a crush on Duncan MacLeod.
Ah, well,
That was before she discovered Seal, of
how
course.
can you resist a man with a sword?
Well, you can, but only briefly.
Yeah.
You want to give a closing statement?
Well, we sure did have fun, and
Oh, folks. Well, we may not have discovered the ultimate truth, but by being authentic and digging into ourselves and our perception of ourselves, we have at least shared our individual truths, and we hope that's useful to someone out there.
mhm. Yeah, I hope that what people get from this is that, uh, first of all, there are many ways to consider the worth of writing and the expression of creativity, um, but also that we do have some choice in whether or not we engage with only the fun stuff or if we get sort of caught up in the stuff that pulls us down and forces our creativity to be a little less fun, maybe.
That seems very well put.
Thank you.
Next week we'll explore some techniques for doing that. And we'll look more into the concept of success and why some work is successful and what we consider to be success.
That sounds great.